10 alerts coming every 4 hours. Now we probably have 70, 80 alerts coming every 4 hours. I think our company is so well drilled now in this routine of looking at alerts. The company culture that any game that launches, you have to get data pipelines ready. You have to get alerts ready even before the game is out in a way. That's also I see a very big issue in a lot of companies where people are heartbroken क्योंकि उनका path नहीं जीता in an experiment.
User engagement and retention is a crucial but least understood aspect of growing a successful business. We are here to change that. Hi, this is Ankur. Join me as I dive into conversation with the best and brightest minds in user engagement to help you navigate the why, what, and how of this subject.
Hi, good morning. Welcome to yet another episode of the State of Retention Marketing. I'm very excited to be having this conversation with Bharat today. I've known him for almost 10 years and somebody I highly respect as a very sophisticated marketer, a very sophisticated guy in terms of data and retention practices. There's an insane amount I expect to learn today from this conversation. Thank you so much for doing this, Bharat. But just to get everyone started, I of course know you well, but just for the audience's expectation, it'd be great if you can do a quick introduction.
Yeah, so I started Food Panda was my first company, so still love it to bits, although it's not there anymore. But I started my journey as a sales guy at Food Panda. Did sales for 6 months, and suddenly someone resigned in the marketing team, and the founders realized that I have a MBA in marketing. So they called me up and said, "Ki, acha, why don't you join the marketing team?" So it was as unplanned as it was. Started out with, I think, email as a channel. Email used to be big back then. Started out with email as a channel, got SMS, got app marketing because app was very hot at that time. Then someone resigned from the affiliate marketing side, so got affiliate also. And slowly and steadily I realized that, okay, it's something that I like doing. It is very good in the early parts of your career to understand that, okay, this is what you like doing. So I've been very lucky in that aspect. And then Food Panda Berlin happened with you. So for those who don't know, Ankur and me, we go back a long way, as Ankur said, but I was working with Ankur in Berlin. Ankur was thanks to you, you made me feel at home in Berlin. Although Ankur is pure veg and I'm pure non-veg, but we've had good lunches and meals together. But yeah, the role, I think that was the role where I realized the kind of maturity that you can get into while doing digital marketing, because before that it was not all, but 90% of it was brute force. That this works, this does not work, where is the documentation, where are the A/B tests, where are the processes. What we used to focus on initially was that, okay, which is the emailer which is getting a higher CTR, which is a good creative. But then what happens after that? Once you've landed a good subject line, you've landed a good CTR, what happens after that? So I think that maturity came in while we were working together, where we had all those automated journeys, which we could talk about later.
Sure.
And that happened. I realized that CRM is something that CRM was back then. I think it wasn't called retention per se. It was just called CRM.
Yeah.
Then got an opportunity back in India. Had to come back due to family reasons, but got an opportunity to lead gaming marketing for a gaming company. Did that for 1.5 years. Realized that gaming is a space which is very exciting, but 2015 was pre-Geo, pre-UPI, so there was not a lot of money coming into the system and no revenues per se. Although we had one of the top grossing games in India, but still. So then got an opportunity at at Paytm. Was really kicked about joining a company which is changing the direction of how India transacts, which is great. Went to Paytm for a year. Did whatever I could in the short span of time, but then Junglee, in the back of my mind, I always wanted to go back to gaming because I suddenly found that gaming as a space is so exciting. And real money gaming per se, because you have the game, which is your product. You also have finance. and which is transactions, and you also have core engagement, core retention, because that is how good gaming companies make money. So then I realized maybe Junglee is the right step in the career. I think I called you also when I was making that decision. So yeah, and now it's been 5 years, all about to complete 5 years in May. So it's been a good journey. Thankfully, things have fallen into place. When I look back, all the decisions have come out well. Yeah, and I hope this continues.
Very cool, right? So let's, maybe zoom in a little bit on the 5 years at Junglee that has been. So in terms of the maturity curve of how your user engagement and retention back then was and how it is now. Obviously, it's a long journey that's been crossed, right? And what I would love for you to break it down into the key phases and the key milestones in your opinion, which were the step ups in your evolutions, let's say.
So I look at it from a people, data, and automation perspective, let's say. So from a people perspective, I think, so we've always been a very data-driven company. I joined in 2018 and there were already a lot of hygiene which was in place. Hygiene in terms of so we use Tableau as a data visualization tool. So Tableau was in place, which is great. We were not relying on GDocs and Excel files anymore. We had alerts in place, which meant that, okay, if you're seeing a drop in the last 4 hours, there will be an alert that will come that, oh, revenue dropped. So the entire company would start coming into action and figuring out, and not let it be like a 1 week problem. It would be a problem that was dealt on that day. So a lot of hygiene was covered. What we realized was that because we started our data journey very late, we only had 4 people in the data science analytics team when I came in. What we slowly and steadily realized that they became the bottleneck for every problem to be resolved. And hence what we decided was, okay, then we'll have analysts in marketing teams, we'll have analysts in product teams, which is, I think, now the par for every marketing and product
what would be
teams.
very helpful, Bharat, is if you can tell me what the scale of ops was back then when you started out, because corresponding to that, you had a bunch of hygiene factors sorted, but that happened already before you came in, which means the company already knew that this has to happen. But what was the size and scale in any kind of metric? Maybe just the number of employees or revenue if you're able to share.
So I joined when there were 24 people in the marketing team and there were 110, 115 employees overall. Out of 100 people, there were 4 people in the data team. I think 10 people in the product team. And a lot of it was just tech and CX, which is customer experience, because thankfully, the basics of the company were sorted when I came in. The goal was, how do we mature as a company? How do we mature our processes as a company? How do we mature how we are collecting that information and deriving insights? So we knew, I think now I'll be able to tell you better. We knew we knew what is going down in terms of metrics. So is my revenue going down? So if revenue is going down, are people playing less? Are people playing for less money, etc.? So those basics were sorted, that we knew what was going down. The maturity had to come in to say that why is this going down? If there is a drop in a certain cohort, then why is that cohort going down? I think that is the journey that we've tried to traverse from 2018 to now, is that a lot of people in the company now have started asking a question of why is certain things going down. So for people who have 10 years of experience and still come to Junglee, they find it very hard to answer that question, is why is certain, because I think in a lot of companies what happens is that people stop at what is going down. And then you do a discount and then you do something, etc., and some things work and some things don't. But then understanding the why is, I think, still a work in progress, because you don't get the right answer all the time, and you sometimes end up getting the right answer. So I think that is where the maturity now is in terms of understanding why it is going down. From a data perspective, again, we had alerts, but now we had, let's say, 10 alerts coming every 4 hours. Now we probably have 70, 80 alerts coming every 4 hours, which means every cohort, there is an alert for every cohort. So by cohort, I mean is we divide people into very basics would be lifetime revenue. But then you'd also want to see the velocity of the revenue, which is revenue in the last 30 days, revenue in the last 90 days. So there are certain cohorts for that. What we also see is the age of people in the system, which is if someone is a 2-year-old player, with us or a 5-year-old player with us, how are they behaving differently? You'll also look at platform level data. So you'll also look at game level data, game variant level data. So there are multiple cohorts in which we've segmented the single customer. Now the challenge is, because you have multiple cohorts, is one customer who's a power user coming in seven cohorts and getting 7 notifications in a day. So that is the challenge. That is the beauty of making multiple cohorts, is that you go very granular. But the challenge is, how do you not spam the user? And so that's where we are working on a lot of cadence, building mechanisms, a lot of processes around who to send, what to send, when to send, if to send at all or not. I think that's a bigger concern. I think all companies have gone through that process where they've realized that, okay, maybe sending 10 notifications a day is not helpful. It is very counterintuitive when you look. It is very intuitive when you are the user, because you don't want to receive 10 notifications in a day. But it is very counterintuitive when you look at data, because every notification you send, you end up getting some value out of it. So now the goal is to understand, if you want to send 1,000 notifications, a million notifications, or 100 notifications, what is the exact number? So that is now the debate internally. So that is the level of maturity that we've gone in. We're also looking at stopping user triggered journeys, which is, if you fall in the funnel somewhere, should I send you a notification or not? Because ultimately we've had so many automated journeys that we're now sending 10 automated journeys which are user triggered events. So maybe the user is happy with it because it's user triggered, but maybe he's not happy because there are 10 notifications that he's getting. So that's kind of the conversation right now, from a data, from a personalization perspective.
Drill a lot deeper into some of these things which you just said so casually. You said there's some 70 or 80 odd alerts that come every 4 hours, something like that.
Yeah.
Which means the number of potential error points is much larger, because not everything is going to fall all of a sudden. So you have like, I don't know, maybe a few hundred things which are being monitored, and out of which 40, 50, 70 kind of raise alerts every few hours.
But don't get looked at.
Which are not, which don't get looked at.
So what happens is, see, now we've also now started categorizing alerts into red, amber, green. And red also, how red is the alert? Is it 1 standard deviation off? Is it 5 standard deviations off? Is it 2 standard deviations off? The problem with multiple alerts is that then there is a lack of ownership that comes in. Because people get 10 alerts in a day. It's just an email
which
in
is
the mailbox.
Which is exactly why I was going to go to the full forge, your 7-8 alerts to 70-80 alerts journey. At what point, how did this scale out? And because the same thing happens with segmentation, right? You go too deep, you have too many segments to now deal with. So how do you deal with them differently? Yeah.
So now what happens, and what happened in 2019 was that we realized that, okay, we're probably sending too many alerts to a handful of people. Now, an alert for a week.
And is an alert to the customer, or the alert internally to the team to monitor?
Internally. To product teams, to marketing teams, to BI teams, to CX teams, whoever is responsible for the alert. But for a week, you are excited about the alert. For a month, you look into it. But after a month, it becomes an email, which automatically goes into some folder that you marked for the alert. Or a label under your Gmail inbox. So then what we decided was, okay, this is not helping, because now no one is looking into it, assuming that others will look into it. So then we figured out a matrix where we said that, okay, no, these are 5 people who own the alert, and these are 5 people who have oversight of the alert, so that even if the owner is not looking at someone who has an oversight is looking into it. And then there's finally like the department head who is responsible for the alert. It fixed things in a lot of ways, because now everyone knew that they only have to look at 5 alerts and not all 70. So it kind of fixed that. But what happens is, as you mature as a business, you start figuring out more cohorts. More cohorts means more alerts. So then every year there is an exercise to say that, okay, now these cohorts and segmentations are not relevant anymore. So let's remove them. And now let's have these 5 cohorts which are very important. So that's an activity, I think, which will never stop.
So do you like cap out? Okay, this is the number of things we'll look at, because if you want to add 5, remove 5.
Yeah. So we do that. And the thing is, earlier we were just a one product led company, which was Junglee Rummy. Now we've launched House Art, which is a fantasy product. We've also launched poker very recently. And we keep on launching games, and if they don't work, we keep on stopping them. But so now the goal is, okay, for people who have multiple product level ownerships, how can we make life easier for them? So then you have analysts with them who are responsible for alerts now. But I think our company is so well drilled now in this routine of looking at alerts and also responding to them that it's kind of become part of the company culture that any game that launches, you have to get data pipelines ready, you have to get alerts ready even before the game is out in a way.
Sure.
So it's just become, for people who are looking at it from an outside perspective, would be like, yeah, like these are just a lot of alerts, you humanly cannot deal with them.
Sure.
But it's just become very organic in the way that we look at data now. So now alerts are a way of not even opening Tableau reports, because if you're there in the system for a long time, you look at 4 or 5 alerts and you understand the pattern completely. So it's kind of also helped us in reducing time that goes into an analysis.
You know, this seems quite obsessive in terms of the way this whole alert mechanism is ingrained into the entire broad company culture. You mentioned variety of stakeholders within the company, but do you think this is the, let's say, table stakes now across the ecosystem? Because you've seen payments, you've seen food, you've seen different industries. Is everyone equally obsessive, or is this, you know, unusual and unique to gaming?
I would say it is unusual and unique to gaming because, and again, but I could be biased because I've now worked in the industry for 5 years and I don't know what's going on, let's say, at a Zomato or a Swiggy. But from a lot of people that we interview, it's not the case. There is a company value that we have, that we obsess with data.
But it's somewhere either top-down driven, or you've seen the revenue impact of all of this, right?
We've seen the revenue impact of all of this, because see what would happen is, and I think from a maturity standpoint, 2018, 2016, 15, a lot of problems that would come to you as a marketeer would get solved by doing marketing interventions. But now it is not the case anymore, because now everyone solved those basic problems.
Sure.
Which is, acha chalo journey bhej de. Yeah, you've had an app showing something, or you've had flash sales, or you've had this or that, etc. Or you've had certain level of personalization, which is name, which is location, etc., etc. But now a lot of problems that come to marketing don't have a marketing only solution. So you have a solution which is BI led, we have a solution which is data led, you have a solution which is product led, you have a solution which is product marketing led.
Would you be in a position to share some examples?
So for example, let's say I, as an acquisition guy, I'm spending X amount of rupees to get people to download the game and then play on the platform. Now let's say my CAC is increasing. A very basic example. Now my CAC could increase because of whatever is happening before the first deposit on the platform.
So acquisition in your case is when the person makes his first money deposit.
Yes. So now it could be, okay, so what happens before that? Or what happens in the usual journey? A customer sees a banner somewhere, clicks on the banner. Now banner could be email, banner could be a GDN, banner could be push notifications from some other platforms, banners could be anything. Or a video. Customer sees the video, comes to a landing page. Pre-October 2023, we were not listed on the Play Store because of Google Play's regulations. So customer had to come to a landing page, click on the download button, get a warning saying this app might be potential harmful or something like that.
Yeah.
Then go to the settings page, press a button, then download, then open our app, see, and we are not a platform where the user can just browse. So you have to register to do anything. So the customer registers. So registers, then comes to the platform, looks at our lobby. Lobby is the first screen that you see. Clicks on play now, plays a free game, and if he wants to deposit cash, then does a deposit. So there are so many things here. Now, I need products help at every step of the funnel. If my install to reg ratio is going down, I need product and text help. If my registration page is not behaving, if my click to registration is going down, I need product help. If my registration to first gameplay is not great, I need their help. So I need their help in everything, right from doing an A/B test to customizing to saying that, okay, now this guy is seeing an ad which is a tournament ad. So we have various game variants. So there is a cash game, which is normal games that you can play. There are tournaments that you can play. So if this guy is seeing a tournament ad, can I show a landing page which is a tournament landing page, but can I also customize the first screen in which the user sees a tournament?
Sure. And this was not the case earlier, but you discovered that this is a funnel drop-off point, so we have to fix it.
Yeah, and so it would...
So normally when you talk about a drop in a certain ratio or whatever metric, this would have to do with either something going wrong or an evolution in your sophistication to understand that I'm able to now zoom into this problem.
Exactly. So I think the core belief that I have is that if it's not measured, it will not be improved.
Sure.
It is as simple as that. Hence the obsession with measurement, but also the obsession with just looking at data. I think this is something that I tell to every person who comes in the system who's a fresher. Like, sir, what do I need to do and what should we do? I learned by reporting. I learned by putting stuff in GDoc every day and then look at, I had 1% CTR, now I have 1.5, now I have 2, now I have 1.75, so what do I need to bring it back to 2? So I think the obsession had started at Foodpanda in a way where the 6 restaurants that would go in an emailer to say top 6 restaurants in your area would keep on changing by us saying that, okay, maybe these 6 restaurants get us the maximum orders, but these 6 restaurants get you the maximum CTR, and these 6 restaurants get you the maximum whatever top line.
Sure.
So then you keep on experimenting. It's similarly the same case here is that once you know this is your trend, there are only 2 things that you can do.
Yeah.
One, you maintain the trend, or you improve that trend.
Sure.
And if you have to improve that trend, that is where all these alerts come into play. Is that you know that, okay, if my rate of first registration to gameplay was X% and it's continuing to be X, then can I figure out a way to make it 1.1X? And if it's dropping to 0.8X, then I know I have to raise an alarm with the product and the tech teams to say that, okay, this is not working and we need to figure it out.
And somehow this whole thing is owned with marketing in your scenario.
No, so and this is very unique to Junglee, is that every module, so by every module, what I mean is, let's say within marketing, you'd have acquisition. In acquisition, you'll have refer a friend as a module, you'll have onboarding as a module. In retention, you'll have communication as a module, you'll have various modules everywhere. You'll have tournament as a module, etc., etc. Every module is owned by 3 people, one from marketing, one from product, and one from BI.
So it's kind of what I hear frequently from this whole new growth teams, because they're supposed to have a team representative from at least product marketing and perhaps even engineering. Because marketing by itself in a silo can't really do a lot of things which you then depend on product for.
I think our marketing as an independent function, I don't think can exist in a digital first company anymore.
Yeah, well, that's a great learning. I think a lot of people have still yet to cross that barrier in terms of having marketing in a much deeper collaboration with product itself, if not more.
Yeah, so see, because essentially, again, if you're selling a shoe, you are still dependent on your engineer who develops or design guy who develops that shoe. But eventually, for you to drive a lot of sales, you can still be a very kick-ass marketing team and drive a lot of sales.
Sure.
But if you are selling something which is one, not physical, and your own product in a way, if you don't, so retention in gaming is as good as product in gaming, because anything that product does impacts retention and acquisition and marketing, and anything that we do impacts their funnels.
Sure.
So you can either fight with each other, which a lot of marketing and product teams do. We still do on a day-to-day basis.
But it's also somewhere healthy, right? Because then that's where the pressure comes from.
Yeah. So one of my first LinkedIn articles was where I'd shown Captain America and Iron Man fighting, which was Civil War, and saying this is marketing and this is product.
Yeah.
So you need to have those conversations, but I think once you realize that both of you have the same goal, it just becomes easier.
Sure.
Like, I remember yesterday we had the discussion where the acquisition guy was like, dude, funnels are bad because product has done some change, and product would come back with the same reply, dude, show me the source level data because I think you've gotten a crap traffic source, and that is why the funnels are down.
Sure.
So that happens every day.
Yeah.
But I think what we've realized is that there is no point fighting. One person is right and one person is wrong. That is why we have BI, who comes in and with a very neutral point of view and says, no, you are right and you are wrong.
So you're able to make those judgment calls, and that has become acceptable to kind of say, okay, this is a fault, we accept it and we move on.
Yeah. So I find it very funny in a way where people take it to heart. कि नहीं यार, अभी मैं 2 बार गलत हो गया हूँ, तो third time how can I be wrong, and how can I be wrong every time, like this, that, etc. I think no matter how cliche it is, but like it's okay.
Yeah.
So
In fact, it's quite an interesting cultural thing, right? Because if you want to incorporate experimentation as a habit, then you will fail a
yeah,
whole
you
bunch
will
of time,
fail.
and that's
Yeah,
okay.
yeah. So it's not that product comes up with features that work
Always work.
every time,
Yeah.
right? I think 5 out of 10 times or 6 out of 10 times doesn't work. Marketing comes with ads which flop all the time, and you put 50 lakh, 1 crore as budget. So it's okay.
Life goes
As
on.
long as you realize that, I think it's also what personally helped me was that once you realize that you're in a company for 4 years, 5 years, 10 years, you look at things in a very different manner. And as long as you are a little secure about your job, your role, your point of view on things, I think it becomes easier to accept that, okay, I can fail, still have my job, still work the way, not change my approach, and it's okay to fail, and it's okay to publicly accept that, okay, this A/B test has not gone out well, and we'll revert to control, and that's it. Like, there's no other.
Interesting. But when you mention this whole part around BI, that's your neutral decision maker jury sauce, because otherwise data is also,
Yeah,
prone
you
to
can do
distortion,
whatever.
right?
Yeah, you can do what.
I can jolly well package it the way it works for my purpose.
That is why. So what we started, and when we started doing this, and again, I would also have that bias, and the product guy who's sitting right across would also have that bias, where both of us are correct, because we're just looking at data in a very different manner.
Yeah.
Hence, what we did as an exercise is that, okay, for every test, you will define a primary metric. So let's say I'm doing a conversion, how to improve conversion as an A/B test in the first deposit journey. Now, let's say I'm making some changes to my first deposit screen, which has some tiles which say, okay, you want to deposit 200, 500, 1000, 2000, and this is the bonus that you'll get. Let's say it's that simple. Now I want to make some change to it. Now, what we will do is we will define exactly this is the primary metric that the test will be measured on. But there are secondary and tertiary metrics where the test will also be measured on. Now, the primary metric could be conversion, because everyone wants to improve conversion. But it's very simple. Conversion mein, if you're showing 100, 200, 500, 1000, now start showing 10, 20, 50, 100. Conversion will increase,
sure,
right?
You can hack it.
But then, so you'll be very happy, my conversion badha di 10%, business is booming, etc. But then you're also not realizing that people who are depositing 10 rupees will always remain at 10, 15, 20 rupees as their deposit value, and eventually give you less revenue.
Yeah.
Versus people who are putting in 200 rupees at the first will always give you more revenue later. So now there would be a tussle ki yaar acha revenue kam ho raha hai, but conversions बढ़ रहे हैं, so what do we do? So then you figure out that, okay, because you are doing an intervention at when someone is registering, now you're putting them on two different paths. So now your metric should be rake per registration, and not rake is revenue for us.
Sure.
Revenue per first registration, and not revenue per deposit or the conversion. So that is how our journey also involved inside Kia. Some of things are very logical, right?
Sure, but it's also sophisticated, right?
Sometimes the decision maker is a product guy.
Yeah.
So you'll only look at product. Sometimes the decision maker is a marketing guy. So you will make that your primary metric. So what's happened in this whole journey is that we've also kept on changing primary metrics, secondary metrics, tertiary metrics, to finally conclude that this is an A/B test. A lot of people don't do outlier treatment. Which
it will destroy a whole lot of test outcomes, but you don't exclude.
So it will slow your process, but eventually it is the right thing to do. So by outlier treatment, I mean is there is path 1, which has 1000 rupees revenue from 10 customers, and there is part 2, which has 900 rupees revenue from 10 customers. But now, if you don't do outlier treatment, you'll be like, acha, path A is better, let's go with it. But what could happen is that path A could have a user who gave you 500 rupees revenue, but others are shit. So if you don't do this, so that's also a maturity that has come in. We never did that back in 18 or 19. But then we realized, okay, no, this is the right thing to do, because, and then you start doing decile analysis, etc., to finally, and that came why? Because some product guy discovered that, okay, no, yaar, this is a good way of doing it. Or a marketing guy discovered, or a BI guy. I don't remember the name, but someone in the company said, yaar, nahi yaar, we're doing this wrong. And then eventually everyone accepted that this is the right way, and hence you have less debates around, is the A/B test even concluded correctly or not? That's also I see a very big issue in a lot of companies, where people are heartbroken क्योंकि उनका path नहीं जीता in an experiment, and that is true. Like for
I can't name the companies, but these are fairly large companies where there's political topics around this, that this is the product team and this is the tech team, and how can an engineer come up with a better idea than the product team? So they'll end up almost conspiring to make sure that the A/B test fails, right? So that kind of stuff happens. But that's a different world. But from what I hear you say, there's obviously all of this maturity, but that the way it seems, there's also a very steep degree of fragmentation that will start to happen. So when you say that the 10 rupee versus the 100 rupee first buy an example, maybe there'll be some traffic sources which will do better with this versus that.
Yeah.
So how does it add up back to that play, right? In some sense, it will have to.
So what we do now is, that is also what we realize, is that if we have if you have multiple A/B tests, so what could be a way of doing an A/B test is that one, you either integrate an A/B test mechanism within the product. Two is, if you don't have that, then what you do is you do a pre and post.
Okay.
7 days pre, 7 day post, you
and that
figure
works
out.
Okay for you?
No, so it didn't, because there is a lot of seasonality.
Exactly.
So we did
I was
that.
wondering. I mean, 7 days before after just doesn't seem right.
So, but we did see. We started with that because you have to start from somewhere. Otherwise, you're always working on gut feel, right?
Yeah.
So then we realized, nahi yaar, 7 days pre and post mein kabhi-kabhar you'd have an external event like an IPL. You'll have an external event like an India match. So what happens in India matches, people start consuming content offline, which means they'll not play games anymore.
Online,
right?
Sure.
IPL, same. A festival, a long weekend. So wherever the user starts spending time offline is when we see a drop in revenue, which is very
seems logical now.
Seems logical, But when we realize, realized it later, right? So it's all been some steps here and there to the journey that to where we are right now. And then we realize, this is not the correct way of doing it. So then what do? You exclude the holiday, and then you still start going ahead. But then we realize, no, there is Saturday, Sunday that comes into play.
Sure.
Sunday people don't play because they are spending time with family. So then we realize, this has to be a proper A/B test in which you divide the paths in a way.
Have you considered publishing a report on how India plays? Because you pretty much know how many people from which geographies are working in their offices at 9:30 AM and actually playing a game.
Yeah. But I think there are people who've done it in a fairly decent manner. So I don't think we'll be able to add a lot of value to it.
Yeah, but this sounds like a whole bunch of secrets will start tumbling out, right? I don't know.
Yeah. No, I hope I don't give out any trade secrets, but yeah.
No, not trade secrets as much as the cultural nuances of how India plays, right?
Yeah. See, because again, it's my bias because I've been here for 5 years. I just feel that this is very logical and everyone knows about it.
Fair enough.
So then, so we figured out a way to do a proper A/B test, but then we figured out how are we dividing people in the A/B test. This is where we realized, okay, maybe one path has affiliates as a traffic, which is, with all due respect, not as good as organic.
Yeah.
Right? And maybe some. So,
I mean, no other channel.
So then we realized that, okay, maybe how do we then productize in a way that every path that we build has equal representation of all sources. So how do we randomize the user IDs in a way that every path is equal and no path is intersecting with some other path, because that's also important. If you're doing 5 A/B tests and all of them are talking to each other, you will not get a correct answer. So it's been again a journey where now we are fairly confident in the way that we are concluding A/B tests. But again, it's been a lot of fights, it's been a lot of hard work, it's been a lot of soul searching in terms of understanding, are we doing the correct thing or not?
But while of course this is a journey in evolution, it's by and large logical, won't you say? Because you can kind of come to a logical conclusion, of course, in hindsight now, but you could get to that.
Yeah. So now if you look back, we feel that this should have been how we did it in 2018 as well.
Which is fine, but that's obviously the hindsight bias, right?
Yes.
Obviously. But now if you were to design an A/B test playbook for somebody, or to say that, okay, this is the 3 things you should not do for sure. Like for instance, you mentioned about the intersecting paths, right?
So,
and that's
exact. So this you should not do at all, because
it doesn't
again,
matter.
It does not help.
It's a biased outcome.
Yeah, it's a biased outcome and you're wrong from the start.
Yep.
Right?
Sure.
You're setting yourself up for failure. Second is, never get someone who owns the A/B test to also conclude the A/B test, which will always give you bias. Not always.
Sure.
A lot of people have the right intent, but there will always be a bias, because data is what you make of it.
Yeah,
like you can do 5 other pivots and get a completely new picture, which is very different.
Just to have the neutral BI guy to actually be the conclusion.
Or someone neutral, like just someone could be a BI guy, could be someone else,
somebody
but
else
someone
neutral.
neutral. And I think it's very important to, at the beginning of the test, write these are my 3 metrics on which I will conclude the test. Because what we've also seen is that if you keep on changing your success KPIs during the A/B test, you're then again changing the A/B test, or you're changing the A/B test, or you're again setting yourself up for failure, because there is one guy who would have seen that data and said कि नहीं यार ये बात तो सही नहीं चल रहा है, तो एक काम करते हैं success KPI change कर देते हैं, which is again मतलब these are I think 3 or 4 things. I think the more sophisticated you are, as you have a tool, you've integrated, you've created a product, that is always great. But someone who's starting new, I think these are 2-3 things that you should always keep in mind.
Very amused about and also somewhere excited about is the opportunity to learn from the gaming industry for something like an e-commerce platform. There are a whole bunch of people now selling 150, 200 rupee lipsticks online. And they're doing huge volumes, acquiring customers from all sorts of tier 2, tier 3 towns also. If they were to be as obsessed with understanding repeat behavior in a Tripura kind of state, would this not translate into a lot of incremental value for them?
It should, ideally. It should. See, and you've worked in food tech, e-commerce, I worked in food tech, e-commerce. I think people I don't know, because I've been out of touch for the last 5 years.
Same here, which is what's amusing me.
Or a Zomato, or an Ola, or an Uber, etc. But just purely from the interviews that we've taken from a lot of these companies, what happens is that a lot of them have built very sophisticated AI/ML models, where the guys who are eventually responsible for retention or acquisition or marketing, etc., are just following what the model is saying. They are not questioning what the model is giving them as output. So, for example, and I've interviewed head of retentions, head of acquisitions, where their main role is reduced to operations, because everything is generated from a model. So, a lot of sophisticated stuff. For example, we are right now trying to figure out a market mix model.
Sure.
But from whoever I've talked to, who say that they've cracked the marketing mix model, there are certain assumptions that they put into place to eliminate one channel completely. Which is so weird, because then your marketing mix model is not correct. But because it works for them in a way, it's correct for them. And so what happens is, because you've now developed a very sophisticated market mix model, or a churn model, or this model or that model, the marketeer then is reduced to saying that ye model se aaya, this is what I did, and this is the result.
He's the operations guy.
So he or she becomes more operations than pure play marketing or product.
This is very interesting. So who's making this model? Who owns the creation and the logic behind this? And because if the marketer is not the one designing this, he's probably only the user
the central BI, data science, ML teams who create the models, and see, kudos to them, because they've done
it happen.
They've done it in 2016-17 when no one was doing it. I'm talking about a handful of companies who've been in that scale. But maybe their expectation was that marketing will learn it eventually, and marketing didn't. Marketing is also at the fault in a lot of places, where we also have blinders on and we say, nahi yaar, hamara kaam hai अच्छे creators banana, our work is more brand, our work is funnels, and that's it. I will not learn what someone else is doing, even though it impacts my KPIs directly or indirectly.
It's also an evolution of the ecosystem, right? And what we keep saying across more conversation, we're doing an academy, we're doing this conversation, because acquisition has been 15-20 years old. People have understood, played all of this. Retention, user engagement, watching all these metrics, in your scenario is a 5-year-old story. In most scenarios, it's less than that, because we've been a very acquisition and growth at all costs fueled kind of industry, which means most people never really had that pressure to really look at this very seriously.
Yeah, people don't look at ROI. Like when we were doing the whole conference, I was surprised to see that people who are running acquisition or retention for such big companies who have $10-15 million as marketing budgets are not looking at return on investment.
The definitions change. In your case, the definition was going a little more sophisticated than most other people are currently still used to, even today.
Yeah, but then you also have to look at, see, again, I would not fault them, because when I was at a company which was only looking at top line, we were not looking at revenue at all. So I would not fault them.
It's a prioritization topic. I wouldn't necessarily blame individually, or it's company life stages, the ecosystem has grown.
But I think it's just more fun once you get to a company where the company is looking or working so that is one recommendation that I give to everyone, is that work in a company that is bootstrapped. because then you know. See,
What
spending
truly
money.
matters.
I was listening to a podcast or a conversation between Nitin Kamath and
Kunal Shah.
Kunal Shah.
Yeah.
Yeah, Cred
Curious.
Curious. Yeah, in which Nitin said that we signed 11 notifications in a year, and I was like,
I know.
dude, I cannot do that. Like,
Sure.
no matter how sophisticated we claim to
Hmm.
be, I will not send 11 notifications in. And even though I don't have investor
You
pressure,
might do a year.
I
in
will
a
not
day, right?
spend. Yeah. And there was time when we were sending 11 notifications.
And it
we
still
said, no,
works. I have a lot of users in our customer ecosystem who do that, and that's fine.
Yeah.
It works for them.
So this used to happen at Paytm a lot because Paytm had 17 verticals. Everyone used to send one notification a day. So eventually a par user would end up getting 7, 10, 11, 13, 14. So he said that incrementally after a point of time, money is not valuable or there is no value to incrementally. I don't care about it. Which is, I think, the same with business is that after a while you realize that, okay, I will grow at this pace irrespective of how much I reach out to the customer, how much I don't. So I think once you work in a bootstrap company, you also realize from the other standpoint, कि why is he saying what he's saying? Because he's worked in an environment where there has been no money.
Sure.
So he's figured out growth hacks which are
non-money driven.
Yeah. And he also said one thing, which is spending money is the easiest job in the world, which is because I've burnt a lot of money. So myself. So I think, once you go and once you cross that barrier, I think one thing very happy, I would credit Vijay Shekhar Sharma for it, which is when we were at Paytm Movies, and the goal was to get as much market share as possible because Book My Show had 98, 99%. One day he came and said, you'll not spend acquisition money anymore. And I was like, dude, kya karu main ab? Like, how do I?
But this is the real problem to solve, right? That's going to be fun.
What do I do? No, because I got panicked for the first 1 week. I was like, dude, मैंने तो पूरी जिंदगी यही किया है. अब मैं क्या करूँ? So then
that's the harsh reality for a lot of marketers today because the funding ecosystem is where it is, which means acquisition dollars are away from reach.
I was on Twitter and there was one tweet which said the collateral damage of less spending is just bad IPL ads.
But IPL ads nonetheless, huh?
Yeah, but IPL ads nonetheless, even though it's so expensive now. So I think so. Once he said, so Paytm at that time had 10 million plus DAUs. So he's like, dude, itna traffic aa raha organic. Convert that to movies.
Sure.
And which seemed very logical. But it seemed very logical because we are all grown on that steroid boost of acquisition dollars.
Sure.
Right? Which we still are. We spend a lot of money. But it just opened a very different side to marketing for me personally. Which said ki you don't have money, you still can grow. And then we figured out so many hacks on the homepage to drive traffic to movies that it became internally a case study within Paytm itself.
So you didn't say that to everybody else and you were not all competing for real estate on the app screen?
We had to fight. Like we had to go to the growth guy and say ki nahi yaar, mujhe ye notification chahiye. So you had to kind of ration every push notification, and that's when I started
real estate on the app.
Yeah. So that's when I started going very deep into. So you had to ration icons. You had to ration कि मेरा banner कहाँ पर आएगा कौन से दिन में. So if I had a Bahubali releasing, I would want a banner for the entire week because Bahubali is Bahubali. But then someone would have also Akshay Tritiya coming. So the Paytm Gold team would have कि dude आज के दिन मुझे banner नहीं दोगे तो कब दोगे? It is Akshay Tritiya today. So you would have that fights. But then eventually, I started going deeper into understanding कि अच्छा who is my customer.
Correct.
Because I didn't care who is my customer. I just
if you have 10 million, then definitely not everybody is for you or for him.
So then I started doing pivots and understanding कि अच्छा यार, this is my customer. How does he or she transact on a bus platform? How does he or she transact on lending? How does he or she transact on gold, etc. And then when someone buys that product, can I give them a movie ticket? Can I give them an offer? Can I give them something to make them realize कि यार Paytm पे movies भी book कर सकते हो? Because that was it wasn't even the use case. People went for recharges. So I think once you, even in a very well funded company like Paytm, once you start doing that is when you realize कि यार अच्छा, acquisition is not the be all end all, and then you start looking at retention.
No, so in fact, within the whole Paytm ecosystem itself, I've had this example from other people wherein the journey of a user in an ecosystem like that, which has multiple offerings, has to also be orchestrated better because if you show him like 20 things, he gets overwhelmed and 90% of it will become blind spots.
Yeah.
Which is probably what's going to happen in that kind of a very, very crowded kind of environment because you have too many things to offer.
Yeah, but then I think Paytm just had a lot of data. So you could customize your home screen in a way.
Exactly. Wouldn't you want to do that and like make sure that I only see 3 things which I'm most likely to do, and the remaining 97 are like
See,
out
but
of my
then the
screen?
growth guys for other verticals would also fight, no? Ki yaar, you've
But that's
seen a
where segment
transaction.
traffic, no?
You've seen a transaction. I haven't seen a transaction from this user. So you can also fight and say, ki yaar, nahi, I need more real estate because the customer knows that
You know what's fun?
you can book movie tickets on Paytm.
I'm going to draw an example from the banking industry. Typically, even today, all of the traditional banks are structured with there's a FDs department, there's a loans department, there's a credit card team, and there is a home loan, maybe another whatever. So they're like several vertical teams. And the customer relationship is not owned by a single entity, which means just the way you have all of these different growth guys fighting for real estate, the banks still have siloed communication going on from different people. Which means if you call the bank today to say that I want a loan, the guy that talks to you is different from the guy who will speak to you when you want a credit card.
Yeah.
So structurally, because these organizations are defined vertically and not user-centric, in sense that this is one customer relationship and I know how this will evolve. He'll do this first and then this and then this and then this, which is the logical sequence of how you should go about selling him stuff.
Yes.
So on the first day when he's come in, he's done some activity. Don't all of you try to sell him together, which is what if you're doing a crowded screen on a Paytm might start to mean.
Yeah. So this is the problem, let's say, that we are not going through, but we went through when we launched multiple games on the same app.
Sure.
So for example, an MPL would face that problem. We are facing that problem where how do I ask my X games retention guy to not send a notification when Y game is already going on? So I think once you, and it's a very difficult exercise because getting that personas, if your database, I think it also boils down to how you have structured your database in the first place. So again, for a marketeer,
a starting problem, right? And if you realize it in retrospect, you can't go back and fix things.
See, no marketeer in the world, or very less marketeers in the world, when they are building a game as a GTM, also talk to the DE team.
Yeah.
How are you structuring your database?
Sure.
It is very difficult to even have that conversation. Make your database in a way.
Have that kind of, I mean, they won't even ask that question. Do they have that kind of maturity in your assessment?
No, I also don't. It's also, we've realized this after a while, maybe it's worth having that conversation to the DE guy and say, I need these 5 data pipelines to be ready because I want to start sending communication, or I want to start sending proper bonuses. I don't, so if someone is playing poker, I don't want to send him a rummy notification, or I don't want to send him a bonus saying play a rummy game and win X rupees, whatever. But that comes, I think, why yes, that you should not jump companies every 1 year, because then you're not getting
deep. The cycle.
Yeah, you're not getting deep into what, and again, I say it with a lot of hindsight and the benefit of hindsight that I have, ki chalo yaar, ek company mein 5 saal reh lo, but it was not my plan also. Everyone gets bored after 2 years and says, ki yaar, I want to join. Ho gaya mera.
Yeah, sure.
So it's when you start going away from marketing and start looking at other things, and if you enjoy those things, is when I think all these conversations start happening.
Well, ultimately, it's all business, no? So whether you kind of define very hard lines between what marketing does, what product does, the consumer doesn't see it in that light. He has a single experience.
But it's not, no matter how correct it is, what you're saying, or how cliched it is not what always happens.
It's very hard to incorporate within organizations, right? In some sense,
yeah, because people are very territorial. How can you suggest a brand campaign to me? Dude, मैं देख रहा हूँ, मतलब. So, yeah, I have 10 years of crafting brand campaigns, and you are a data engineering guy who has 2 years in the system. And see, not everyone comes with great campaigns.
Yeah.
But there would be 1 out of 15 ideas which will blow your mind.
But that's also hard to predict any which ways.
Yeah, but what happens is,
judgment are you going to
but it's happened with me also, where after the third idea, I would stop listening to people. Because I'd be like, dude, मैं कर चुका हूँ, सोच चुका हूँ, ये नहीं होता है. I also have my biases, right? कि यार, I tried this back in this company, it didn't work.
In some fashion, while you didn't necessarily have a very objective view on it, but it's stuck in your head now because you have history. Yeah.
So now I'll not listen to these guys. So I think the same happens with every vertical, where if I go to a DE guy and say, yaar, mera table aise bana de, then he'll give me 10 things and say, yaar, nahi, mera joins बढ़ जाएंगे, mera query time बढ़ जाएगा, this, that, etc. which is correct in a way because he's
Hmm.
looking at it from his
His
perspective.
perspective.
So I think once you start unbox, like just moving out of that silo in all verticals is I think when that growth as a marketer, as a product guy
You know,
comes.
so if you were to redo some of these things differently compared to what has actually happened in your journey in actuals, what are the few things that you will do differently?
I think I'll not start the beginning. I'll not change the beginning, which is with Food Panda.
No, I wasn't talking about your career path. I was talking about the last 5 years of your evolution.
Okay,
That
here
right?
at
You said
Junglee,
this whole desilification of
I would do that from day one.
the
See, when I came in,
desilification, so to
when
speak.
I came in, I had a very clear mandate that okay, this is one vertical that I have to start with, and for the first 6 months, just go very heavy in it, go very deep in it, and solve all the problems that there
This
are.
is retention you're talking about.
This was acquisition back in the day
Acquisition.
because we had to grow.
Sure.
And then even though I was the VP of marketing and had to look at
Hmm.
everything, the company thankfully understood कि यार you cannot give someone everything in the first 6 months because I was bound. So everyone who comes in gets overwhelmed because
Sure.
just the amount of data that we look
Yeah.
at. I got overwhelmed after 3 months. I like, dude, कहाँ आ गया हूँ मैं? Like, कौन सी problem देखूँ? Like I had a problem in prioritization because there were so many problems within marketing. And then thankfully I got enough time to move from acquisition to retention, brand, etc., that it took me a good 1 year to get the entire scope of it. But then when I had that, then I started talking to product, then I started talking to tech, etc. Now what I would change is that maybe go deeper into a module and then start talking to all stakeholders and not just look at the marketing side of acquisition and then move to the marketing side of retention, then move to the marketing side of brand. But just when you're doing acquisition, talk to enough people because it just helps you to get to solutions quicker or get to the problem statement easier. I think a lot of times you also take time in figuring out the problem statement in itself because you have 10 alerts and you have so many things intersecting with each other. You don't know कि यार problem थी क्या.
You know, what's also very interesting is when you started out and you said this, you were overwhelmed. It was to do with the fact that there's all of this data info already in place and there's all of these alerts already coming in.
Yes. So now what do you do?
Somebody who's starting, let's say, one level before this would end up having to do all of this to begin with, right? And that might itself be a big task because you have to have top level alignment to make sure that you invest all this time and effort and bandwidth in establishing this data infrastructure.
So that I think
in your case, you were lucky to have it on Day-0.
Yes. Credit to Kapil, who's the president of the company and the co-founder. I think he's been very instrumental in driving that culture of looking at data very seriously within the company. So again, I didn't have to push a lot of people doing that, but I had to push a lot of people in marketing to do that. कि यार देखो, मतलब it is not
would
just
have to do with because this is a new team that you've built and they come from different contexts.
Yes,
where
it's
they're
a
not
new
as obsessed.
team. 2018, not everyone was looking at data.
Yeah.
To be very honest.
So even today they're not necessarily, but sure.
Yeah. So that's like you had to culturally align people to say that okay, yaar, now. So now the beauty in our company what is that even if the CEO is asking you to do things, someone who's 5 layers below would send an email saying यार ये तो data ही नहीं बोल रहा यार ये तो सही नहीं है. So why is the CEO saying that? He or she might not directly talk to the CEO, but he'll definitely talk to people who are 2 level or 3 levels above and say yaar, and start a conversation.
Which is a great thing to have.
Which is a great thing to have.
So one is that level of data visibility to that guy. So CXO -5 level people also have that kind of visibility to say that okay, this is my analysis.
Because there is Tableau which is available to everyone. So it's also again it's a journey which has led us to be where we are when it comes to the maturity that we have. I think one thing which I'll not shy away from saying is that we are very mature when it comes to data practices.
Sure.
We might not be mature when it comes to a lot of other things, but just when it comes to data practices, I think we are decent.
Somewhere or the other, like you said, it's come top down from Kapil, so obviously that helps matters.
It helps in a way, but see, aligning everyone to that vision is very, very, very difficult, but because it's hard to do. It's hard to look at
work,
numbers.
Obviously.
It's hard to look at it repeatedly every day, etc., etc. So it's hard work.
And it's potentially boring up to the point because, like you said, all those alerts will go to some inbox somewhere and you'll start not.
It is not the exciting work when you sign up for marketing or product. It is not the exciting part
from a gaming company. And I mean, one would imagine life in a gaming company to be quite exciting on an everyday basis. And what you're describing is I mean, of course, it's exciting for somebody who's as obsessed with data, but otherwise, this might sound pretty boring to a lot of people.
Yeah, it is. Matlab, to be very honest, it is. But it's just that you have to, once you internalize it, is that yeah, this is the right thing to do. I think it just makes your journey and your point of view or your vision, it just everything falls into place. When you say that yeah, nahi yaar, this is the right thing to do long term. Now everyone, then you understand that yeah, there is value in doing this. And now I think 5 meetings out of 10 or 6 meetings out of 10 are just purely around data and numbers. There are only 4 meetings which is around अच्छा communication क्या होनी चाहिए, brand क्या बोल रहा है, color कौन सा होना चाहिए, which is like the more exciting part of marketing. But then now 6-7 out of 10 meetings are just around this. ये cohort down हो गया. What people don't realize in marketing is that a lot of grunt work is just on Excel, on numbers, etc. So when you sign up, now the ask from the brand team and the social teams of the world is also to look at numbers.
Yeah.
The ask from a business finance team is also to look at acquisition. The ask from us is also to look at tech. So it's just become, I think market has evolved in a way where if you don't evolve, then you become a dinosaur.
Yep, fair enough. So, going back to the thread, we were talking about things you do differently. And one of the things you said was the de-silification, so to speak, if that's a word, within different modules within the organization to understand all the parts of the puzzle better before you would kind of move on to the next piece, right? So, what else would you think, let's say from a people point of view or the org structure that you design, because power equation also, as you mentioned, is going to cause potential conflicts and reservations, right? So, what else would you do differently?
I think we were late in setting up data teams. Okay. I think I would do that from day one.
And you had 4 people data team when you joined 5 years ago.
Yeah, but that was a central data team.
Okay.
I would from day one start hiring marketing analysts and product analysts.
Okay.
Because you then ask senior data folks to look at bigger statements like churn models, prediction models, etc. etc. You don't ask them कि यार अच्छा ये data extract करके दे दो यार. Like this is what used to happen in 2018. So we'd ask them to extract data, plus we'll also ask them to do analysis and then give us the right answer. Which then obviously they started becoming a bottleneck. So I would hire people for the data team very quickly. People who are obsessed with numbers, but people who are very non-biased in a way. Like you could figure that out with an interview. कि यार इसको कितना प्यार है लोगों से और कितना प्यार है नंबर से.
If he has to fight a battle on behalf of numbers, he will.
Yes.
Or not.
Yes.
And that's the kind of people you would want.
That's the kind of people that you'd want, which don't get swayed away by अच्छा मेरे senior ने ये बोला तो भाड़ में जा A/B test, और मेरे senior ने ये बोला तो मैं सही कर दूंगा. So I think that I would do very quickly. De-silification I would do very quickly.
In some sense, those are kind of people that will thrive in your system, and the others who are still more in love with people than numbers will struggle.
And that's a journey, that's a journey. And then third, I would also then ask a lot of people who are not very heavy on data or numbers to figure that thing out for themselves. Ki yaar, this is where I will thrive and this is where I'll not thrive. Because what happens from a people standpoint is that you then end up struggling very badly with either people who are working with you or you yourself कि यार अच्छा यार maybe it's just not working for me or this is not the approach that I want, etc. etc. So I think that is the message has to be very clear कि यार this is what the company, and there's nothing wrong in it or right in it कि यार this is what my company value is. So if you're aligned, like I have a very deeply ingrained philosophy in life कि यार you spend 10-12 hours a day in office. You spend more time in office than with family.
Yep.
That is the reality. Everyone travels, everyone stays.
I remember the last time we had dinner, you came back to office at 9 p.m.
Yeah. So, and again, I would not glorify hustle, etc., etc. But yeah, it's a choice. So once you realize कि यार अच्छा, this is, am I aligned or am I not aligned? I think it just makes life much easier. You spend 12 hours with people that you don't like, which is a very stupid way of spending 5-10 years of your life.
People you don't like or things that you don't like to doing.
Yeah, it might be you like the people, but you don't like the company, or you like the company, or you don't like the people, or both. So
or the job profile.
You have to, so you in that quadrant, you have to figure out your North Star and your quadrant कि अच्छा यार यहाँ पे लोग भी अच्छे हैं. Not everyone would be great, but यहाँ पे मैं रह सकता हूँ for 5 years and यहाँ पे I can make a difference and the company is also good. and then I would stay here. But
Hmm.
what I see with a lot of people is that यार 2 साल में you want to leave. क्यों? क्योंकि कंपनी अच्छी है, रोल अच्छा है, but यार मुझे मजा नहीं, मतलब it's just very random reasons. So that is what I don't like. I would really want people to understand at the beginning कि यार
Hmm.
or me to be very clear with them
Hmm.
कि यार अच्छा भी ऐसे चलेगा भाई. If you like it, please stay, please progress, please grow within the company. But if you don't like it, figure out a way to like it or then figure
Move on.
out. Yeah.
You know, that brings me to the whole talent supply question, because this is hard work.
Yeah,
This
yeah,
is
yeah.
not necessarily sexy or fun or as exciting. And we've had this conversation with the people like growth folks at the growth school and all of those conversations as well, where there's a large, let's say, inflow of people who want to become growth managers
Yeah,
or
yeah, yeah.
growth hackers, so to speak. You'll see that term abused and used
Yeah,
across
yeah, yeah.
LinkedIn now, right? But and you know, when I come back with saying that the supply of people in the retention ecosystem, user engagement ecosystem, is still small because it's a new subject,
Yeah.
and the level of obsession you guys have isn't the same across the ecosystem, which means there's not been as much, let's say, pay scale upgrades also for these profiles, right? So that in your case, in your experience, you also found it somewhat not so easy to kind of bring people and then let them to be at a level.
Yeah.
So what's your let's say message to young folks who are looking to get into careers in marketing? Retention still seems to be underserved, and now it's at a premium in some
Yeah,
sense
yeah,
because
yeah.
people
Yeah.
are, the demand is bigger than the supply. So what's your assessment of somebody looking to make a career path in retention marketing or user engagement or whatever
Yeah,
you know
yeah.
you define the boundaries as?
I think one, it's a very, once in India people realize that funding will, once it starts coming at a premium, retention automatically will become the go-to team in any company. The and it's very logical, right? You'll have more money, you'll have more money to spend to get customers because we are the DAU farm for the world. But once that DAU, I think you will start seeing reports now where Zomato would say 5% of my customers give 40% of the orders.
Correct.
Someone else would say 1% of my customers give me 80% of my orders.
Yeah.
So earlier these conversations never happened or publicly were never spoken. What publicly got spoken was we acquired 20 million users this year. So now once you start seeing funding coming at a premium is when you start realizing that retention is very, very, very important, which it always was. All
But you just
successful
never cared about
companies,
it.
all successful companies are built on retention. Successful companies are not built on good acquisition and bad retention.
Yeah.
Successful companies obviously are built on both, but it is very important to nail retention. Once the message starts coming from the founders, the VCs, etc., that you need to invest in good retention folks, which I think has started happening now, is when suddenly people who are 1 year in their organization, so you learn from peers. I would not say you don't learn, but you learn a lot from peers versus podcasts versus YouTube videos, etc. Otherwise, itne videos or podcasts hai ki yaar janta would be very knowledgeable. by now.
Honestly, I've not found a lot in India, which is where we kind of keep struggling to, so how do you accelerate this learning curve? Because the way the demand is going,
Yeah.
the supply is not going to grow overnight.
So
And
what
you'll need people to do stuff.
what helped me was that I started reading a lot of HubSpot, Mixpanel back in the day. This is 2013, 14, 15, 16. That helped a lot. Is that अगर आपकी company वो नहीं कर रही है, then at least read what others are doing.
Sure.
And I genuinely got a lot of good ideas from it.
So just, this is where the whole podcast, YouTube content on the web needs to be the way.
Yeah.
But you're also saying there's a lot of self-motivation in doing all of it because you'll only go so far without that.
Exactly. Because see, someone can so I remember our conversation in Berlin where you were like, Bharat, we need to personalize stuff. And then we did it eventually. We personalized the shit out of it, got 40% higher conversion, 60% CTRs, etc. But then, let's say if we were not there, I wouldn't have done it. I would be very happy sending notifications.
Some people who should drive that forward, and which is where thought leadership would come into play. In this case, the level of sophistication you've described in the gaming industry, I can very well see this having substantial incremental value for a bunch of these e-commerce companies also.
Yeah, so that's where I think I don't know if it's correct on my part to say it or not, but as you said, self-motive, there is no substitute for it. If you don't want to learn, even if I give you everything in the world, you will not learn.
Yeah, but now if the job offer is on a premium and there's more demand, then you by all means will
So
see people
you-
gravitating. No?
You should, right? So again, if you are 1 year, 2 year into the job and you've done, let's say typically you end up doing acquisition. But now if you want to, so let's say there are two people. There are people who are 3 years into their job and have done acquisition or brand or social or product, etc. Why should you get into retention? Is because eventually that will be talked about. That is what will be talked about in the next 10 years.
Sure.
Is how do you retain customers? How do you do it well? The company who will win between Zomato and Swiggy, who will win? The
Sure.
person, the company who retains people more. It's as simple as that.
Fair
So
enough.
now do you need, because they've acquired, they've done everything to
Everybody
acquire
that was there
customers.
to be acquired is being acquired.
Right. So now incrementally you will not get a lot of people.
Hmm.
The same is the case with a Flipkart, same is the case with an Amazon, Uber, Ola, this, that, etc. All the big brands that you see have acquired people.
And this would also mean the retention guy is not purely a marketer. He has to have his fingers with
With
everyone,
product, with
right?
tech, etc.
In your case, it's product and tech, but in an e-commerce world, it'll also be catalog team and category team and operations team and delivery logistics, because there'll be some payment gateway which will always fail and which will screw up transactions, and those things have to be flagged and brought back to the conversation.
Exactly. So now, if you are looking for that switch, then obviously you need to be very. So retention is a combination of two things. There is data, and there is communication.
Sure.
So you have to figure out a way to be good at both of
I
these,
was gonna
because
ask
these
you
are the
this.
guys. These are the guys who rise to the top.
So I was going to ask you this question. What you described as a level of data obsession. This is a very left brain, very number driven, very data science. I won't call it data scientist, perhaps, but analyst kind of guy who's been
Yeah.
obsessed day in and day out with numbers.
Yeah.
And these are the guys who are not necessarily going to be the most effective at creative communication.
But
So what's the right, let's say, mix to look at from your own skill set perspective? Because most people aren't, going to start with both. They'll be able to start with one and then maybe have a touch of the other.
so you should do it once in your life. Thankfully, as I said, things fell into place for me where I could experiment a lot with communication at Foodpanda.
Sure.
If that has not been the case with you, at least do it, at least do the reporting, at least figure out a way to look at the docs that the communication team is creating. A lot of people don't even look at it because they look at it as a secondary
Yeah, it's not my
function. कि
job.
यार मैं तो data वाला हूँ, I am here and comms is here, which is what is stopping a lot of people to do that. So at least be in a position where you can question the team. You necessarily don't need to write communication. Now with ChatGPT, you can also write communication.
Yeah, sure.
But you should be in a position to understand their data, and you should be in a position to cross question them, because that is how you will learn. If you keep on asking them, so for example, our customer is very desi, tier 2, tier 3, even tier 1, but desi. Sec B sexy audience, sec A thoda kam hai. अब मैं उसको, if I start sending them Game of Thrones notifications, it will not work.
Sure.
But anyone who comes in the company and any new guy or girl who comes in the communications team would want to send cool communication, because this is what we've seen Swiggy doing, Zomato doing, etc. etc. So सबको लगता है यार ये तो best notification है, 5% CTR आता होगा. But if your user is watching Tarak Mehta का उल्टा चश्मा, तो why send them Game of Thrones? So that's, as a retention marketer, you need to at least have that lens on. Itna macro at least customer को समझ लो, and then talk to the comms head or the analyst or the manager, whoever it is. कि यार अच्छा, why are we sending this? If we are sending this, then what is the CTR that we are getting? Why are we look at their communications calendar at least. So it's a good starting point, and then if you like doing it, go deeper into it. If you don't like doing it, at least have a monthly cadence on what's happening.
I mean, if you want to grow to be in a position where you can kind of control/influence both sides, you have to learn both sides. There's no way out
Because
of
then
it.
why should a comms guy who has 10 years of copywriting comms experience should listen to you?
He won't.
They will
otherwise,
not, right? So you need to at least start doing that.
But I mean, likelihood is the data guy might be finding it easier to learn the comms side of things to a certain extent, but the comms guy would not find it as easy to learn the data side of things. Or do you
Which
see
is
that
okay.
happening as well?
No, which is okay. I think
No, I'm saying that for people in the content side of things, if they want to become real retention marketers, it's a slightly harder jump to make.
It is, but then
It's also valuable.
That's the reality that you are being faced with, is that you have to understand. Then see, with data you cannot understand only macro, which is कि अच्छा चलो this cohort is doing this, why is this dropping? And if you stop at that, then the data guy would spin so many stories that you will not be able to wrap your head around it. So unfortunately, that's the case, but you have to listen to what the market is telling you, that okay, this is what you are supposed to do. This is at least the hygiene. So cover your hygiene, then move to advance, but at least
Yeah.
cover your hygiene from both standpoints.
And the fun fact is the last few years of growth across the ecosystem have been very acquisition driven. So even within the world of marketing, number driven marketing, you have people who don't necessarily have operational depth in the retention side of the ecosystem.
Yeah, because again, it's not exciting in a way.
Yeah.
For a lot of people, because for me, social is exciting. मैं copies लिख रहा हूँ, shares आ रहे हैं. For me, acquisition exciting because I brought down CACs. But for me, retention could not be exciting because there is no customer who sending me an email saying, यार आपने बहुत बढ़िया notification भेजा. Yeah, you've done such brilliant targeting that I transacted today.
Sure.
No one does that, right?
It's a
So
pretty thankless job in some sense.
there is no external validation that is coming your way. So that is why I also feel retention is not very sexy versus an acquisition or a brand, because there is no external validation.
Besides, you also don't like, not spending 100 crores a year, whatever, on in some sense. So for some people, it's also a bit of an ego boost that I control this level of budget, right? And retention guys don't necessarily see life in that light.
No, retention spends a lot of money, I feel.
Yeah.
You spend,
I mean, you spend on SMSs, of course, but
no.
what
But
else?
everyone's spending so much on bonuses.
The bonus
people
in the
don't.
Gaming industry, that's true, but
No,
e-commerce
but
guys would
I
probably
get
give
Swiggy.
discounts.
I get a Swiggy bonus every, like you open and you transact, you have 10 bonuses every day, right? The problem is the retention guys. I don't know if they take it under their P&L or not. Otherwise, you can a person who's handling retention for a big e-commerce would be spending 10, 15, 20 crores on vouchers easily, right?
I don't know if that appears in their reporting structures yet.
So then you can also brag about कि यार मेरा budget भी 10 crore का है, right? But you don't brag about it because there's no external validation per se.
You don't see
and you don't say it because
yet.
And you also don't say it because that also kind of gives away the scale that your company is at.
Yeah.
So a competitor can very easily guess कि चल यार, this is your ballpark if you're spending this much in bonuses. So I think, but again, then you are driven purely by external validation.
I mean, it helps matters, not that it has to be the sole driver.
Yeah. So then again, I personally feel the moment of a person who has 1-2 years experience starts seeing their peers in retention, getting a lot of value monetarily, second, a lot of value from the industry, automatically the switch will start happening. I think it's just probably 1 year from now, 6 months from now, where if the CEO starts calling the retention team as frequently as the acquisition team, automatically the switch changes कि यार अरे भाई इसको तो ज़्यादा visibility मिल रही है, तो what are they doing that I am not doing, and automatically it becomes it's a function of what's more valued in your company right now.
Which is ecosystem evolution as well, because most of the growth hackers that happened in the US market, in the Western whole play, was all of these product-led growth companies which are doing all of these experiments every day in and out to make sure that people who are coming in are converting better and they're repeating better and engaging better.
Yes.
So I still love some of the notifications that come from places like Quora, right? They do such a fabulous job of integrating all the data that you've engaged with, putting it together in a standard draft email and a single digest, as what they call it.
Yes.
And every time you get an email from them, the subject line changes based on the kind of questions you've engaged with before.
Yeah.
So very cool stuff. So very interesting stuff around the whole state of the ecosystem and how obsessively you've looked at data and how that has become pretty much a culture and practice in the company. I'd love to now get to some stories and examples of how retention has matured in your play. So I would imagine that when some sources of acquisition give you customers, they don't repeat or they don't come back as well as the others. So you might be doing something else. So we could run us through some of these stories of what kind of interventions do you make from an automation, personalization, segmentation point of view. That would be very interesting.
So let's say from a source level, if there is a source which is refer a friend. Now to refer a friend, are you sending the same onboarding journey, push notification, SMS as an organic customer?
Sure.
So what we realize is that I need to start sending more things around, not typically what your friend is doing, but what others in the refer a friend funnel are doing.
Okay.
That helps in getting more notifications, that helps in getting more clicks, that helps in getting more conversions. From onboarding, so I think and it is on us as marketeers, is that push notification is now, I would not say dead because that'll be a very controversial statement, but it is as good as dead because you get 30 notifications a day, which is our fault.
The hen that
So
lays golden eggs.
now you need to figure out a way to intervene when the customer is about to churn, because there is very minimal chance of the customer coming back.
Okay.
So now what we've started doing is, how do we figure out that? So one example is the churn prediction model, is that if the customer is about to churn, then can you intervene within the product at that time for the customer to not close the app? Earlier, what used to happen, if you remember, when someone used to go to the cross button on the web,
Exit intent.
you would have an exit intent, you would have a dialog box saying a promotion, etc. Now, can you obviously not, you don't have a cross button in the app, the user can just close the app. So how do you figure out 1 day before or 2 days before the customer is about to churn, can you send them more personalized, relevant content
on the app itself during the session?
Yes.
Okay.
So that the person does not churn in the first place. I think reactivating dormant customers is very hard. Very hard, two, very expensive.
So prevent rather than
just prevent rather than better be safe than sorry.
Sure.
So I think.
But this would need a lot of sophistication in terms of the modeling and churn prediction itself, and then there are variations on how to prevent this guy to churn from churning vis-a-vis this guy from churning.
Yeah,
They'll have
so,
different reasons.
So then you have to see, for someone who does not have a sophisticated. So I'll tell you how our model also evolved, is that now we have a data science team who can tell you that, okay, this is with this probability, this person is going to churn, and you do this. But when we didn't have a data science team, you could always look at 5-6 major key indicators to say कि अगर ये होगा इसकी life में. So for example, if someone started out with 1,000 rupees today and is now at 10 rupees and has just lost 7 games straight, oh, that person will not play. If someone is a new customer, has played 5 games, lost 4, won 4, lost 1, you know which one will retain, right? So then you have to ensure that you don't overspam the person who's won 4 games, and you don't overspam, or if you overspam the customer who's lost 4 games, then what do you do? So then what we did was that there is no point in sending a bonus code to someone who's lost 4 games. वो क्या करेगा? That person will feel you're still fleecing him or her out of money. So we created something called a rummy score. So there's a series of 15, 20, 4-minute videos with Annu Kapoor. Annu Kapoor is a very avid rummy player.
Sure.
So he put in a lot of love and effort into it, where then what we started saying was, okay, if you've lost some games, here is a video of rummy score, which will help you to play better. So there is no point saying get 100% off on your next transaction, because the customer will not make the next transaction. So how can you have more how-to videos? So we started making people learn how to play rummy.
But sorry, so this is the guy who came in, lost 4 games maybe,
and then you intervene within the product. Yeah, you intervene within.
The moment he's lost 4 games, he'll say, "Hey, Ankur will teach you rummy."
So then we experimented saying that, okay, if he's lost 2 games, first 2 games, what is there? So what is the correlation between the games lost on day 1 to D7, D30, D90 retention? Once you understand the final number, that is where. So once you've now understood, okay, this is my data, then what do you do with segmentation? Then what do you do with content?
Sure.
So we realized that we segment bhi अच्छा कर रहे हैं, and we are obviously doing a good work at correlating this with long-term retention, but then our intervention is wrong. So now let's correct the intervention. That then was an exercise with the brand team, got this, etc., etc. No, so intervention, I mean from not the time of intervention, but purely from the content that you're sending. Sure. So then we created this rummy school to say कि अच्छा अब ये करो, ये करो, ये करो.
But if I were to zoom into the biggest problem you had to solve in this whole retention play, in traditional businesses, it's the first transaction or the second transaction kind of window in some sense.
Yeah.
In your case, it might have to do with activation as part 1 of the topic, and then the moment I've loaded money, now what happens? If I've loaded money, I'm going to play any which ways.
Not everyone plays.
Yeah.
So now there would be KPIs which were getting tracked. How many people are loading money but not playing? How many people are playing 5 games and not playing? How many people are playing game on day 1 but not playing a game on day 7?
So what are the biggest, let's say, delta points in your scenario that you found which have the biggest impact on the overall business?
Which is people losing. Simple.
People losing games.
People losing games is the biggest factor of people not
coming back.
Right? Because eventually you want to win in any game that you play. So even if you lose Candy Crush 10 times, you will not play, irrespective of how good the app is.
So you have to just make it hard enough for them to enjoy it, but
is what Candy Crush did, right?
It's a real money people-to-people game. Some people will lose.
Yeah.
That's
so see, Candy Crush can do changes in their algo. We cannot do that.
Exactly.
So you're relying on. So then, can you match people properly? Right? Can you have sophistication around your game match algorithms?
So are you saying that I would definitely lose with these 3 people, but if you put me in front of this guy, I'll likely win. So I'm better off.
No. So we cannot even do that.
You can't.
What we can see, because you're playing your first game, I have no way of predicting your behavior. So then I have to rely on a model which says कि अच्छा यार ये बंदा शायद ये 3-4 click करता है, etc. And that is how you realize the skill level of. But again, if you don't have any data, then you have to match people who come on the same day with each other.
So there could be a whole lot of hacking in some sense, but I don't know to what level.
But we cannot do that, right? Eventually, if we have to maintain impartiality and randomness in the game, we cannot do anything to influence your outcome. Right? So,
but that's the stance you're taking, that you want to remain impartial because Candy Crush.
No, we have to, right? Because we are a real money game. So for me to not do anything which is not in the law or illegal or morally not correct, I cannot, because then you lose the trust of the customer.
Yeah.
So you have to be completely impartial. Only when you start seeing कि यार अच्छा now this is the behavior of the customer is when you start doing age interventions कि यार सीख ले, don't play. So like we also encourage people to not to play. So if you watched a TV series for 8 hours, you don't get a notification कि भाई मत देखो, सो जा, कल ऑफिस जाना है. But we then also do this within the so for example, this could be a good example to avoid churn. If now you played for 4 hours, 8 hours, you're obviously playing with real money, so you're losing, you're winning, etc. So we would proactively intervene within the product to say you've played for XYZ hours, we advise you to not to play today, or we advise you to not to play for the next 7 days. We've also given customers the flexibility of choosing their deposit limits. Ki acha, if you don't have control over your impulsive behavior, then here is a feature within the app where you say you will not let me deposit more than 1,000 rupees. So that's a way
trust building
of
in some sense.
So that's a way of now retaining the customer for 5 years rather than letting them spend all they can and then losing them in 2 years or 1 year.
Short term versus long term thinking, where you're choosing the long term path of building the long term trust and the relationship, so to speak.
Yes. So that's one. But again, all of this just helps in retention, right?
Yeah, but that's also at a philosophical level a mature way of looking at life, because you're letting go of the short term spike you might have gotten in deposits by capping it out.
Yeah. But then eventually, if you look at from a D30, D90 level, things work out. Then more from a communication standpoint, as I said, you've segmented people, but then what is the tone of communication that you have? That is very important. Not everyone can send cool notifications. So what we realize is that you have to send notifications which have like grade 5 English level, which are at a very basic level that everyone understands, because our player is a 45, 50-year-old, our players are a 18-year-old, 21-year-old. So your language has to be universal in a way. It cannot be very niche. That is what we realize after multiple levels of experimentation.
Which is where GOT kind of stuff can't go to people.
Yeah. So you have to be very basic in what you say. You have to be very, I think what we've realized when it comes to communication level intervention is that the easier you keep your creative and you don't have metaphors, similes, etc. in it, the easier you are able to communicate what you want to as a brand. That is what works for us.
No, but help me understand this something, Bharat. In terms of the content and the communication, now at Food Panda, we've seen a lot of value in heavily personalizing it, right?
Yes.
So I know your neighborhood, I know your preferred cuisine, I know the top 6 restaurants in that area. I'll probably use the name of that restaurant in the message content itself.
Yeah.
So the creative part of the copy was like, the opening letter and the closing word, probably.
Yeah.
But what you seem to be describing is the entire message, maybe a push notification, maybe a WhatsApp or an SMS, is a piece of copy somebody's written with some segment in mind.
Yes.
But is there a meaningful play with personalization, or do you think that's not as central to your communication play yet?
So what happens is that if the personalization could be the kind of game that you are playing.
Sure.
Within Rummy. So within Rummy, there are game variants. There are tournaments. There could be free tournaments. There could be cash tournaments. So that is the level of then that is what comes in when it comes to personalization. Is that then I send you a notification not for a variant that you are playing. I send you a notification for the tournament that you are entering, and how are some ways to win this tournament, or how are some ways to do better in this tournament.
So the approach to this would be in one way you create X number of segments, and for each segment you create a certain copy which goes out, and which might have a couple of variables here and there.
Yes.
And the other approach is where you actually take a slightly largish kind of segment, and your entire content plays a bunch of variables coming together.
So then again, the thing around then what happens is then you have a push notification goes to the entire base, or to 70-80% of the base, which is deposit code of the day or bonus of the day, promotion of the day. And then you have these other notifications that are more user triggered, which is a funnel drop, which is you've clicked on some button in the app, which is an event for me.
Sure.
So then I send you something regarding that.
And that content would have the context of what you've clicked and all of that. And that's
so
where the variables get involved.
The goal for us as a company would be, how do I reduce my dependence on the one bonus code promotion, whatever, of the day? How does that become 20-30% of my overall promotions? And how does this automation become 70-80% of my overall promotions?
So automation is by design somewhat personalized.
It then automatically becomes personalized.
It gravitates towards that.
Because then the user is doing something to get that notification, and not me figuring out that this is my calendar of the month and then I have to send this.
Fair enough. So in fact, something pretty similar we try to do in the fashion ecosystem, where you had a whole bunch of algorithm-driven communications going out. In fact, Netflix even today does everything algorithm-driven. Whatever new releases have to happen, they don't have like a calendar that, okay, everybody would get everything every day.
You would only get it if you've seen that season.
That season, that series, some sort of
some genre
preference towards that, right? So I would imagine the algo-driven world ends up being the sophisticated answer to it. In your case, you're saying that there is, let's say, X percentage which is algo-driven, and there is Y percentage which is the calendar-driven approach.
Yes.
And you're very clear that you want to keep moving away from the calendar-driven approach as a share of your communication.
Yes.
And that's where you're headed.
Yeah, because then automatically it gives you more conversions, it gives you more CTRs purely from a number standpoint. From a user delight standpoint, they also know कि यार अच्छा ये भेजा है, which means they care about me.
Really? How do you say that?
Because we've talked to people and they said कि यार अच्छा, when I've lost a tournament, you've sent me something like this, which helped me.
You know, what's ironic for me is, while of course it's the same companies we all talk about, the food leaders in the ecosystem, all that they do is basically very witty copies. And they get pretty
So no one has done what we did at Food Panda.
Which is what amazes me, that is the number-driven impact not obvious enough for them to be considering this? In your case, you're saying you've seen the delta on conversion fronts, right?
Yes, because it's also very logical, right? It is something that I am telling you.
So too, but it doesn't seem like it's common knowledge.
Yeah, I am telling you that I want to buy a shoe. I don't want to buy a shirt. So,
besides, you want a shirt, I want a jacket. Why would both of us just get the same message?
Yeah. But I think everyone goes through that journey of figuring out what works and what does not, because essentially all of us love defining 15 attributes to one customer. Ki I like a blue shirt which is from X brand, which is in this price range, which goes well with black jeans, which you will wear on this occasion, and 10 other things, right?
But that's where the question of segmentation, fragment, right? If you were to put all those 6-7 variables that you just spoke about, I'd probably be left with, I don't know how many segments, right? Because every time you break it into two, you're adding level of complexity in terms of content.
So which is why you need to constantly measure. So we also, every quarter, we look at our automated journeys also. Are the automated journeys adding more noise?
Sure.
Or are they adding business value?
And this would be via test and control.
This would be via test and control. And you also start seeing, right, कि journey start हुआ था 2% CTR से. And it's now at 0.2% CTR.
Sure.
So then are you incrementally driving more business or are you pissing the customer off?
Yeah.
So as long
have
as
a threshold where below the CTR you'd kind of switch things off?
Yeah. So as long as you don't, see, for an automated journey, if you're not getting 1% CTR, So there is no point.
Might as well switch it off.
Yeah, because it's automated, it's personalized, relevant, etc. उसमें भी आपको 1% CTR नहीं आ रहा है. So then there's no point, right? Because if you send some random notification, you'll still end up getting 0.3,
Something
0.4,
to
0.5% CTR.
Correct.
So it has to generate some real impact. So again, we've done that. Now we have a very good cadence around saying कि यार even automated journeys need to be relooked at every quarter. It cannot be कि सबको सब आ रहा है, because we are also the user.
Yeah, so you get all
So
that.
you will also you open the app to test or to see what's happening, and you'll start getting 5 notifications, 5 in-app messages. तो मैं game कब खेलूंगा यार अगर 5 in-app message आते रहेंगे. So
true that.
it's again you just have to keep on measuring data. That's why I said it is just a lot of grunt work that you end up doing.
Fair, absolutely. So from your evolution perspective, you will ideally want only as many messages as are relevant for the users. You will strip away everything that's not helpful.
So now we are also saying that we will also not send you user triggered messages, because we have so many journeys, you're also getting 7
too many of them
notifications.
And
so should I send 7 or not? Yes. So how do I develop cadence? How do I develop prioritization, etc.? And that is a very, very time consuming, like full of 100% effort, 200% effort type of process where you're just doing this then for a week.
So some sense in the e-commerce ecosystem, we've seen this whole, prioritization framework where something that you did 30 minutes ago is a lot more relevant as a trigger to something you did 3 days ago, which means I will first send this, and whoever's covered in this will not get the next bunch. And then I'll do the second message, which is, let's say, about a wish list, and then he'll not get anything else. So in that pecking order, you do a bunch of messages. Once everyone is covered, or whoever can be covered is covered, the rest of the bunch would get that calendared message because I don't have something for them.
So you have a channel preference, you have a time preference, you have a day preference, you have a game preference, this, that, etc. That could help. That could be a good framework to help you start reducing.
But cadence management is something that you kind of are dealing with right now. The question to solve for.
Yes.
And it's still push notifications, which means the cost doesn't hurt you as much. For those who are doing
SMS
and emails,
right? Which is the
root
cause of this evil.
Abusing.
Is because people like WebEngage, CleverTap, etc. charge on a DAU basis.
Yeah, I know.
The moment you start charging on a cost percent basis, you will automatically see everyone fall into place.
The reason people send all these push notifications, not that many SMSs, is because it's free, right?
Exactly.
So in some sense, people... So, the choice will always be between people who spam or do blast messaging, also get that 0.3%, right? And if you take it away from them, then they start wondering that, okay, how do I deliver ROI? Because not everyone's going to switch to the level of automation and sophistication that you're doing.
No, so it's also, I think, around KR as a CRM head, as a marketing head, sometimes it's also very difficult to keep a track on how many journeys are there on a panel.
Sure.
So someone junior in the platform has an idea today, and वो बोलता है चल यार ये मैं शुरू कर देता हूँ आज. But if you're not keeping a check every month, which is very difficult to do, कि यार every month you figure out, अच्छा, these are the journeys that are going in a panel. You also start losing track of what's happening within the
so
panel.
I would imagine the most sophisticated of our bunch have a few hundred journeys going on. But I mean, cadence control is something we've at least conceptually tried to solve. I won't know if it's a perfect answer or not. But prioritization, pecking orders, that this is what gets priority, and then if this is done, then don't send the second one kind of stuff, right? And then there's throttling, that you might have a gap of at least a couple of hours in between messages and all of that.
So these are things that you can do.
To some extent, this has been prioritized and solved. I won't say it's perfect because it's a function of how people at the end of the day deal with these as well, right?
This was one of our asks from WebEngage in 2016.
Okay, so I'm not sure what when it was released, but it is up there
I know
now.
it is. I know it is now. Yeah.
Interesting. Good. I think very interesting conversation, Bharat. I think we could go on and on for this, and I'm going to catch you offline and we'll do more conversations on the subject. But this has been extremely interesting. Thank you so much for giving us the time.
So, well, thank you so much for joining in with the conversation with Bharat from Junglee Games. To me, it's an extremely exciting learning conversation, and I have a few interesting takeaways. The amount of obsession they demonstrate with numbers and dashboards and alerts, it's quite crazy. It's beginning to make the gaming industry look boring, and turns out it's actually a lot of hard work to make the kind of money they make from people. One of the things that I found fairly fascinating was the ability to remove bias from some of these experiments by actually introducing a third BI team, which is a more neutral kind of team, wherein the guy who's designed the test is not the same guy who's assessing the outcome from the test, which makes the testing a little more scientific and fair in my impression. The other thing I found fairly fascinating was the number of multiple A/B tests that they're doing while trying to keep the paths fairly distinct and intact, because it's fairly complicated or probably messy otherwise to end up having intersecting paths and not having clear A/B test outcomes. So that's a great learning. Within this whole A/B testing ecosystem, they don't just associate primary KPIs, they also look at secondary and tertiary KPIs. And if you're solving for a business problem, then you can't just optimize for one metric in the play while ignoring the others. So it's all great learnings. I think there's a lot of inspiration to draw for pretty much all businesses to be that data obsessed like gaming is. And yeah, I hope that helps matters. Thanks for tuning in. I hope you had a good time listening, and I hope some of these things are actionable for you tomorrow. All the best.